Look, I've lost contact with them. I don't know how, I just know that it happened yesterday. Hiding away in a storage closet, you ensured the door was locked and secured before making the call. Despite the fact it was after hours in the former Endeavour's agency, you not only had to sort the day-to-day management of it, but you were also undercover for the Public Hero Commission. It was a dangerous occupation to say the least, but you, among a handful of others, accepted their offer after you were headhunted. You listened to the frustrated and dismayed voice on the other line, while you attempted to listen through the bass of the music that pervaded through the earpiece. Oh, yes, I'm aware we've had this discussion, but now that it's been a week since we've heard anything about Ground Zero, that only warranted another frustrated response from your compatriot on the other line. You laid your head against the stark wall of the storage closet, listening to the tirade that continued on the other line. They wanted to make things happen, so they requested to proceed, you continued, only to hear the panic and distraught tone in your ear. The beat of the music, whatever was playing, only fueled your headache, anticipating the responses that your compatriot may answer. You began to think it was a bad idea to call them at this time. However, it was the only limited time you had free without any suspicion from your co-workers. The sound of loud banging caught your ear before you were given a quick farewell, the phone hanging up on the other end and leaving you with the typical, familiar dial tone. Hanging up your phone, you stood in exhaustion, pinching the bridge of your nose to help rid you of the tension growing in your brow. Taking a deep breath, you unlocked the closet door and made your way to the now empty office floor. It was only an hour ago that your colleagues had left for the working day, leaving you to handle the rest of the paperwork. You didn't mind this though. It helped clear your head and made some headway into your investigation in the agency. A lot had happened internally, and after being approached by the Public Hero Commission, you became an agent. A spy, really, into the happenstance that was Todoroki's inheritance. Papers were strewn on your desk, one part paperwork for the agency, the other half minor notations on your findings, estimates, and possible outcomes surrounding your case in a little journal. For years you had been serving Endeavour's agency from a managerial standpoint, but after Shouta Todoroki's inheritance of the business, a lot of things changed from your perspective. Except for Todoroki's expensive taste, you've noticed that the agency's financial state fluctuated, finding a pattern 4 times a year specifically. Unfortunately, because of your managerial role, you handled people, not numbers. There had been times you had attempted to speak to anyone from the Treasury, but they had ignored you or simply had dismissed your questions. You tapped your pen incessantly against your desk. Your eyes continued to shift from one written note to another, your brain firing circumstance after circumstance and causing nothing more than a dull throb in your head. Everything needed to be solid, and yet your notes were all conjecture and not set in stone. Evidence was hard to come by with tight security around the agency. For now, keeping yourself to your job was your one saving grace. That did not stop the approaching footsteps in the office floor while you were engrossed in following up on this case. A tall figure appeared from behind your cubicle wall, his eyes spotting your desk still alight.
"Excuse me."
He spoke with a smooth yet authoritative voice. "Oh, sir," you piped, immediately shutting your journal beside you. Sorry. You took me by surprise." You peered up at none other than Shouta Todoroki, his long hair loose and his suit tie even looser on his shirt.
"You surprise me,"
he stated.
"I thought everyone would have left by now."
"Well, it's difficult when you have to make quotas," you jested with a tug of your lips. "Just doing my job." The smile on Todoroki's face was unnerving. You could feel the tension thicken while his jewel-colored eyes scanned your desk.
"How has the past few weeks been treating you?"
he asked. "Tough, but so far nothing that the media can't handle," you replied. "With the crime rate and the spike in hero activity, the agency's been under the radar to an extent."
"Please, I don't need a report, but thank you for informing me."
"My pleasure." You smiled wryly up at the CEO, attempting to keep your nerves in check. It wasn't often that you would have a conversation with Todoroki. In fact, he rarely walked the office floors, preferring to stay aloft in his office. Well, Endeavor's former office.
"Tell me,"
he started while he leaned on the wall of your cubicle.
"Are you happy here?"
Odd. What kind of question was that? "I am content," you replied slowly, unsure as to why he had asked. "The headaches come and go, but nothing I can't handle. Besides, I can't trust most people, so what better way to be sure than to question yourself?"
"You don't trust your team?"
He was starting to pry. "To a degree," you continued while you tidied your desk. "I can task them something, have an expectation of them. But until I see that they can prove me wrong or exceed my expectations, I will always come to this." You opened your arms to your desk, now with tidied papers but a stack left to do. "If I do a job, I'm accountable for it." This was true on all accounts, having to trust nobody in general here within the agency. Todoroki eyed you quizzically before he stood to his feet in thought.
"So, you're waiting for action?"
he continued asking. "Yes, it takes time, but I'm waiting." Unsure of this strange interrogation, you noticed a smile on Todoroki's face that differed from earlier, as if a spark was ignited from him.
"I will take your advice under consideration,"
he stated, his smile warm. "Advice?" Suddenly a large black leather sleeve was thrusted in front of you. You recognized its seal, something Todoroki adopted when he came to inherit his father's agency, as a calling card. Messengers had been carrying these from his agency to who knows where, but to see one before you was still odd.
"Take the night to do one errand for me,"
ordered Todoroki while you took the sleeve from his hand.
"I need you to head to Endor Docks and make your way to number 2020.
You stared at the leather sleeve in your hand before you turned to Todoroki, confused. "Sir? Isn't that the warehouse that—"
"Yes, don't question me,"
he interrupted with a snap in his tone.
"We've had our hands full, and the usual messenger was out of commission. Arrive at the warehouse. You'll find a set of doors inside. Knock twice."
With what little instruction he gave, Todoroki left you to your cubicle, making his way towards the elevators.
Just leave. I will pay you overtime for this errand.
He ended in passing, disappearing behind the walls of the floor before you heard the familiar ding of the elevator. You stared at the sleeve again in your hand, feeling its soft leather finish. The temptation was there to open it and discover what was inside. Perhaps it may confirm the evidence you needed for your investigation, you thought, while your fingers lingered above its seal. However, opening the letter would lead to incrimination and blowing your cover. With a heavy sigh, you popped your journal into the pocket of your coat before you switched your desk lamp off, leaving you in a dark and empty floor. The trek to Endor Docks wasn't a difficult trip, just a taxi call away, if anything. You held on to the hope that you may uncover more about this case than you would have had for the years spending day in, day out at the agency. And yet, the dread loomed over your head like a shadow that you couldn't shake. Why did Todoroki task you with this? Was it convenient? You ensured you made contact with someone from the commission, masking the text message as a friendly one to be sure. But all the keywords were there, just in case. When you arrived, you walked through the semi-abandoned docks with a wary eye. Again, it became a household name, thanks to Endeavor. But Todoroki had then protected this piece of land and real estate by purchasing it under his name. You yourself had to handle the media releases for this decision. At least, being the head of this department allowed some information to be passed on. Still, before you stood in front of the derelict skeleton of the warehouse that made this dock infamous, you had a sinking feeling. Looking around, the docks were empty of life before you continued on with Todoroki's vague instructions, stepping into the empty and decrepit warehouse. Surrounded by all its remains that still scattered amongst its floors, you came across a set of doors that looked very much like elevator doors. Still, there was no one around before you raised your hands towards the dusty surface of these metallic doors. Nothing. For a moment. Until the doors squeaked open, revealing a very familiar face, his golden stare piercing into yours. He eyed you from head to toe before he noticed the sleeve in your hand, his aloof expression turning smug, but you couldn't pry your eyes away from the looming dark wings on his back.
Ah, never knew Todoroki sent cute messengers,
he commented with a grin. There you were, standing before the former number 2, Hawks, with his tarnished wings dragging on the floor. All the information you had collated about him flashed in your mind. His injuries from the war, the news and gossip about his mental health, his turning rogue after Endeavor's retirement, all of the sightings of his gnarled and disfigured wings. It gave you a splitting headache. You winced from the sharp pain that persisted in your temples and your brow, and the twitch in your eye was unavoidable. Why now, of all times, must your quirk go into overdrive? It felt nauseating. Hawks looked down at you with a curious brow, his left blind eye unnervingly staring at you. He was still, unmoving, while you swallowed your pain, attempting to keep calm under the pressure between your temples. Your heartbeat thrummed in your chest, and the rush of blood in your ears didn't help the aching in your head. You've kept yourself undercover for so long. The thought of being caught by mere examination by hawks would end you. You peered up at Hawks through a strained eye, finding his nonchalant air returned to his demeanor.
Well, head on in.
He spoke while he walked past.
Can't keep him waiting. I already took some of his time.
Confused, you watched as Hawks walked away while you slowly entered into the makeshift elevator. Or rather, some strange old-fashioned pulley system. The doors shut, leaving you in darkness while the squeak of the dumbwaiter echoed in the shaft. Light dimly appeared from below before you found yourself by the entrance of a basement. Clutching onto the black leather-bound sleeve, you made your way inside, opening the doors to large hallways filled with young people roaming around, freely using their quirks. Students. They were all students. You made your way through the halls, unsure what to do next. Todoroki never explicitly spoke of any further instructions after knocking on those elevator doors. He never even mentioned who this letter was addressed to.
Hey, you lost?
Spoke a student in the hall, his hands tucked in the pockets of his pants while he loitered by the walls. I'm just a messenger. You started while you held your small package in view. The usual guy couldn't make it. You happen to know where I'm supposed to go? The group of students turned to one another, eyeing the black sleeve before they smiled cheerfully.
Alright, head for the principal's office. He's just down this way, but I think he may be with the doc.
Doc?
Just take another left and her office is there, in case you can't find him in his.
Thanks. You slowly spoke, making your way via their instructions. Your head was throbbing from all of the information you were absorbing, from the path you took through the school to the number of students and their quirks. All of this was pertinent. The commission would have a field day knowing this place existed underneath one of the greatest tragedies in hero society. Who would have thought that Todoroki had a school?
Does it hurt?
Spoke a voice ahead from an open door. According to the directions you followed, this was the principal's office. Nothing like a little TLC to ease the pain. Spoke a smooth voice that followed afterwards. But yes, it does hurt. You hugged against the wall by the open door, peering inside, silent before you spotted the occupants inside through your peripherals.
Do you need me to reprimand him again?
Spoke the man, his lazy eye watching the woman while she rubbed against the gauze that wrapped her neck, spotted with red. That won't be necessary, advised the woman. I'll deal with him myself. If he can't handle my healing methods, then he's going to learn the hard way. Your eyes widened before you clasped your mouth with your hand, hoping not to make a breath that would attract attention. There by the desk of this so-called principal's office stood Shouta Aizawa, the man you knew from your UA Academy years. The man who, after the war, became an associate alongside you in Endeavor's agency. The man who mysteriously disappeared during that tumultuous time that shook all that was hero society.
I don't understand why you would accept this kind of behavior.
Questioned Aizawa.
I'd throw the guy out for these violent outbursts.
You don't know him like I do, Aizawa, retorted the woman with a smile. He's no one. Besides, I've given him a few special tasks to fulfill, so that should keep him preoccupied. For now. Despite the unfathomable disbelief you felt seeing Aizawa in the flesh, eye patch with crutch and all, you concentrated on their conversation, attempting every means to keep the pounding headache at bay. You wished you could jot everything down at this rate, while your head felt like it was in a vice grip.
Keeping an eye on my former students?
Questioned Aizawa, eyeing the woman in front of him. Yes, well, you still need to know what's going on up top. You hardly leave this place, motioned the woman. And it would be good to know where all of my product is going. I know Sero has been on top of things, but how they are being used is my greatest concern.
Between Bakugo and Midoriya, no less, from your last reports.
Your breath hitched with every revelation they spoke. The years working for the Commission attempting to find intelligence on operations all centered here. In an underground school, led by the former pro-hero, Eraserhead. It almost brought you to tears hearing these words, trying to ignore the sting in your eyes from the sudden swell of sadness and despair. You clutched onto the leather sleeve in your chest, shaking from the flood of emotions that sprung forth. You couldn't step foot inside. Not like this. You suddenly took flight through the halls with a quick step, hoping to reach the exit only to be blocked by that same group of students who earlier redirected you to that office. They stared at you with an evil gleam in their eyes, clearly indulging in their quirks in public.
Where do you think you're going?
Asked one of them standing in your way. Evading them was no little feat, attempting to bluff them with every move, but they caught onto your tactics fairly quickly. They surrounded you, trapping you within the group, while you noticed more students standing by. It was as if they worked together, in tandem.
You're not going anywhere!
Yelled another before you rammed through them in panic. The amount of information in your head was overwhelming. Processing was taking its toll while their hands reached out and grabbed your arms, pulling you back towards the office against your will. In the struggle, you resorted to kicking and stomping your feet onto theirs. A minor retaliation, but enough for the students to release you to escape. Your feet flew, running through the hall and recalling that elevator exit. You needed to escape. You needed to leave. You had to get in contact again. The ripping sound of cloth snapped behind you before you felt your legs pull from under. You fell with a smack against the dirty floor, your hands smashing the ground before your head followed after. Alongside the splitting headache, the crash only amplified the pain, until suddenly, as if a switch turned off, it disappeared. No more headache. No more processing. Just empty. Then your wrists were bound, immediately pulling you up from the floor, now wrapped in that familiar cloth.
Good job, kids.
Commended Aizawa, tugging at his scarf that ensnared your limbs.
At least now I can trust this place to all of you whenever I'm needed elsewhere.
The snickers echoed around the halls while you watched Aizawa collect the black leather-bound sleeve from the floor. The look in his one eye lit crimson while his black hair floated menacingly. His frown disapprovingly judging you while you breathed in relief and dread.
I'm disappointed.
He mocked while he unraveled the letter.
I expected you to have caught on long ago.
Aizawa broke the wax seal with a crack, opening its contents to find nothing. Not a scrap of paper to be found. You felt a sinking feeling in your stomach. It dropped to the floor, staring at nothing but the leather you carried from Endeavor's agency to this place. You had undergone a task asked of Todoroki, only to deliver nothing. Until a heaviness returned in your head, watching the crimson light dissipate from Aizawa for the sensory overload to flood right back in. That splitting, nauseating headache returned, and yet all the signs suddenly became clear. Todoroki's insistence for this task, Hawks' nonchalant reluctance, the students' keen need to help. It was a trap.
Kids, take them to the infirmary,
ordered Aizawa, still with a hold of you in his scarf.
I'll deal with them soon.
On command and with childish vigor, the students picked you up from the floor while Aizawa released you from his bounds. Along with your pounding headache, the overload was too great, almost relinquishing yourself to the grips of these young, aspiring students of whatever Aizawa was running. You weakly stared into Aizawa's only eye, finding nothing there, before you were whisked away by the students, your steps heavy while they propped you up. You couldn't turn your quirk off. It ebbed and flowed with wave after wave of pain that continued to assess the situation. It searched for all possible routes to escape, backup plans to escape, assessed students, their mannerisms, their loyalties, then assessed Aizawa's body language, the way he stood, the way he spoke, what he knew and why he allowed such things to exist. He was far from the man you once knew who cared for justice and for what was right. You only found the irony in that he still cared for his students, regardless of where and why. Your head grew heavier, succumbing to the pain, while the students carried you through the halls. Your feet dragged on the floor. The pain, as sharp as it was, soon subsided, leaving you weak in the hands of Aizawa's students, leaving you with one last thought. Thank God you sent that text in that taxi ride.
I'll be coming around soon. Don't wait up for me. I'm sure you can fix the clock if I'm not back on time. It's simply winding back the arms, right?
Thank you for tuning in to another fanfiction reading. If you enjoy what I do or would like to just fall asleep to my voice, please hit that like button, ring that bell, and subscribe to my channel. Every little bit counts, and I'm very appreciative to all of you listeners out there. So finally, I've come to starting the villain arc AU, really, again. I really enjoyed Aizawa's little introduction into this universe. It is also kind of, I guess, the reason why I've been holding back for the updates on this AU as well. But as soon as Mirko and Hawks are done, the second halves will start to continue. Mainly because there's a little more information in those two that a lot of you might want before the second part comes along. But still, thank you so much for visiting. I hope to hear from you soon, next we meet.